and the IFP spokesperson, Mkhuleko Hlengwa. So thank you so much for your time tonight. The EFF says that the president's speech tonight and the litany of measures that he intends to introduce is too little, too late. What do you say as the IFP?
Well, no, good evening, Oliver. Thank you very much. And, the point is that we are saddled with a national crisis. And this national crisis is playing itself out on a daily basis across the length and breadth of the country. The president's action plan at a high level, obviously, is impressive, but it needs to be implemented. So the taste of the pudding is in the eating. What needs to be the priority now is the implementation plan, the budgeting, particularly if you consider the constraints which the BMA has been saddled with, amongst others. And then to strengthen law enforcement, we need to ensure that we secure the borders. And lastly is the issue of integration amongst government programs and systems which are dealing with this particular issue. So this is a start, but on paper, yes, it looks good, but it's the practical implementation where we as the IFP are now looking that we should be focusing on, so that the deportations where they are applicable need to start. We need to make sure that there's the verification of documentation for those who have documents, and then we need to clamp down on the criminal elements and syndicates which operate in the space, developing fraudulent documentation, amongst others. But the bottom line is that we've got a national security crisis of illegal foreign migration, which is expressed in multiple different facets, from social services to the strain and burden on healthcare, and the sheer abuse, really, of systems. And lastly is that what we must not run away from is that this crisis emerges out of a collapse of diplomatic relations and protocols within the region, where we tolerate across the region specifically, rogue elements, undemocratic tendencies, which then force people to leave. So we need to look at it from both fronts.
Why do you think South Africa has struggled so long to tackle with this issue of illegal migration? Because this is something that's not new.
Well, it's an absence of political will, really. You'll recall that Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, when he was the Minister of Home Affairs, one of the reasons he was chucked out of cabinet in 2004 by President Thabo Mbeki was because of that immigration bill which the Prince had championed. And it was unprecedented, actually, in the country, where the president took his own minister to court. So there is also a particular, cohort of leadership and aspirations within and considerations within the ANC, which is sympathetic because of historic struggle reasons, but it is misplaced and misguided because it presupposes that South Africa is a free-for-all. If you speak to the exiles who had left South Africa, actually, they will tell you that they did not just roam around the streets of Tanzania, Zambia, amongst others. They were living in camps, they were living in contained and controlled environments. And so this was a very specific area of cooperation. It was not this free-for-all, which has done an economic takeover, a social services takeover. And so that there is a misplaced and misguided, political consideration of old, and an absence of consideration about the realities which prevail today. But as I'm saying, is that this problem is as old as 2004 and prior, when interventions were actually tried, but there was resistance within the ANC, which I think still does persist, but the president was forced to actually act because the situation has gone from bad to worse.
I want to ask you, one of the things the president spoke about was that he will be sending special envoys to various countries in the continent. Do you think that will work?
Well, we have to try, because I think we do need to confront these governments and administrations for them to realize the seriousness of the matter and present the raw facts. If you just look at the sheer ignorance and cheap politicking coming out of Ghana, for example, it tells you that there is no consideration of the breach of legal processes on the part of their citizens who are in South Africa. I mean, there's a similar sentiment which is now coming out of Tunisia as well, where the citizens are protesting against illegal foreign migration. Because I think that is where we need to make the distinction.
Yeah.
South Africans are not anti-immigration. South Africans are against illegal foreign migration,
sure,
and the associated consequences and risks that come with it. So we need to explain this to the continent, whether and countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh as well need to understand where we are coming from. So the whole point is that the basket of options that the president has presented must be realized through practical and follow-up and implementation. So if the Treasury, amongst others, is not going to put money to these problems and programs, then we're going to bleed money in other ways. And so we do need the preventative action steps and corrective action steps to be implemented to deal with it. But there is certainly no running away from the fact that those who are here in the country illegally should go.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. Mkhuleko Hlengwa is the spokesperson of the Inkatha Freedom Party.